It talks about spending 90% of your time defining what the problem is. And if you spend that time really establishing what you're trying to solve for, the solution, the last 10% really kind of presents itself. It really has challenged me to look at the work that I do and how I can make it better. Healthcare is a machine. It's huge, and we are just a little piece of that. There are so many different stories in that space that you have to approach every design move and everything you do with empathy. It's the best day of some people's lives in that facility, and it's more likely the worst day of their lives. Yeah, if we're doing this procedure, we need this piece of equipment, we need that piece of equipment, and we need this piece of equipment, and we don't have that in here right now. I'm like, that's a great question. We probably should find out if we're going to do those procedures or not. And so it's those kinds of things that you really want to know up front.
On this episode of the On-Center podcast, we're joined by Chase Miller, Principal Architect at Guidon and host of the Architecture of Healing podcast. Chase is a nationally recognized leader in healthcare design whose work blends empathy, research, and innovation from full-scale cardboard mock-ups with hospital systems to post-occupancy evaluations published in peer-reviewed journals. We'll explore how personal experience, leadership, and service shape his approach to creating spaces that heal. And of course, this episode is brought to you by Map Solutions, helping architects harness the power of LiDAR to capture spaces with precision and confidence. Chase, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Glad to have you, man. I've been looking forward to this. I do watch your podcast. So yeah, it's cool to have another podcast on here. Now I'm a little bit nervous because now I feel like, you're going to judge me. I know you're not that kind of person. But
I'm used to being on the other side of the table here, I'm used to asking the questions. Now we're in the hot seat.
I get it. So yeah, hopefully we can do this without being too awkward. You began your career with formal training in both architecture and construction management, and have grown into a leadership role within Guidon. That dual fluency in design and delivery gives you a perspective that many architects never develop. Beyond healthcare specifically, how has that background shaped your philosophy of leadership in architecture, and what do you believe strong leadership in your profession requires today?
Yeah, so going back to that dual degree approach, like I've always known I've wanted to be an architect since I was in third grade, specifically career day. But that's evolved, and I didn't know what in architecture I wanted to do. Originally, I wanted to do a dual degree and get my MBA, and that was insanely expensive. So I pivoted and said, let's do construction management and civil engineering, and kind of tying those together in grad school. And that's really helped to inform where I've gone from that point in my career. It's really allowed me to see the design boards and the design projects that we work on through different lenses and different perspectives. I've always been interested in business, and specifically now as I've carried that interest forward, the business of our projects. What is the problem that the work that we're doing is trying to solve? It's not just a building, it's a solution. And what are we solving with this design? Be it a functional, an aesthetic problem, a social issue, a revenue issue, a financial issue. How are we looking at design differently? And through my education, I've had glimpses into that, and that's really taken me on this journey into healthcare, more specifically in terms of problem solving from a design perspective. And yeah, with that construction management piece, it allows you to, or it allows me to go into the field, see those solutions in real time, and understand what's working, what's not working, and maybe some of the limitations that we have as designers from a constructability perspective too. Yeah, so transitioning that into leadership, it's really about integrating design and integrating the outcomes.
Sure.
So leading a client and leading a project isn't just about doing a cool design or a cool project. It's about producing an outcome that will deliver value. And so thinking about those outcomes, as I kind of alluded to, what problem are you solving? There's a book that I have used in my career called Problem Seeking, and it talks about spending 90% of your time defining what the problem is. And if you spend that time really establishing what you're trying to solve for, the solution, the last 10% really kind of presents itself as this is the only way you can solve this problem. And so if you really put the right effort into studying what you were trying to solve for, the design kind of tells its own story.
Cool. You mentioned, and this is kind of off topic, but still kind of on topic. You mentioned that you've known that you want to be an architect since third grade.
Yeah.
Career day. It's funny how often that actually comes up in these podcasts. So I've had people like you from third grade, other people talk about um, their Barbie houses and designing their Barbie houses. That was another episode. And then yet another person went to college wanting to write screenplays and then pivoted to architecture later. So that's always interesting to me. What was it about career day that made you want to be an architect?
There was an architect that came. She brought a box full of stencils and compass, protractors, all the architecture tools that you would use to draft plans, and that just fascinated me. And of course, design and production looks very different today than it did at that point. But I was just enamored by all the different things that she was sharing and how you got from these tools and pencils and stencils to a finished product and the completed building, and that just hooked me.
For you, was it more of the creative design aspect or the technical aspect?
Probably the creative design. Yeah, for sure.
Just curiosity.
Yeah.
Thanks for answering. Your work consistently emphasizes compassion and patient-centered care, which I imagine is pretty important in healthcare. But you have also contributed to the evidence base through post-occupancy evaluations and published research, including your work in the HERD journal, HERD
Mm-hmm.
journal. How do you integrate formal research and POEs in your design process? And what have you learned from measuring real-world outcomes that has changed the way you approach healthcare environments?
So I'll start with a POE. I know it's not necessarily a common term, a post-occupancy evaluation. And essentially that's taking your completed project, going back, 6 months to a year after the occupants have been in the space and the users are functioning in the space, and analyzing it and studying it to determine how well the design works. So it's really a functional assessment of, are things working the way we thought they would? Are there new things that we tried in the design process that we weren't sure how they would work, but we thought they may work this way? And so we go through, we do interviews with staff. We do observations and just see how they interact with the built environment and the spaces that we've created. But what's key to a successful post-occupancy is early definition of what you want to study. There are infinite number of variables that you can study and look at in a design process or in a design project. And so with a POE, starting at the beginning, you're trying to solve the problem. So which problem do you want to study at the end and make sure it's working? Sure, there are things you can evaluate once you get to the end that you may not have intentionally put the effort in at the beginning, but there may be certain things that you really want to achieve. And so setting those guiding principles to say, hey, we want this project to solve for patient throughput or medical errors or hospital-acquired infections, or some of those particular items, increased efficiency and productivity for staff. What does that look like? How do we kind of tweak the dials on the design to really impact some of those things? So an example of one of these, the HERD article that you mentioned, worked really closely with the researcher, Julie Zook at Texas A&M, who led this research project. But we looked at views from the care team station to the patient room and did a study, what's called a space syntax. So it evaluates essentially where a care team provider or a nurse may be sitting at the care station and what those views are like from there to the patient room and the visibility of that and the impact of that on their overall, walking distance and the quality of outcomes of the care in those rooms. And so it was a really interesting study. It kind of looks like a heat map when you look at it in a visual graphic. And then we went back and we did some post-occupancy on top of that to layer in things like acoustic performance. We took decibel readers out there and measured the sound in the care team areas to determine if those were louder areas, quieter areas, and if there were disruptions to patients who may be trying to sleep overnight. So we went out there at 6 a.m, 2 a.m, 7 as shift change at 7 a.m, 7 p.m. So we were out there at different times of the day to study some of these things and really evaluate the effectiveness of the design solutions that we implemented in the project.
Have you ever been pleasantly surprised in one of those post-occupancy evaluations? Have you ever been pleasantly surprised how well something worked that was a variable that you hadn't even considered to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, there's a really fun one. It was actually accidental.
Okay.
So there was a project, inpatient care setting where we had, speaking to visibility into the patient rooms from the corridor and from the nurse station. Well, for whatever reason, there was nothing accounted for in terms of things to block that visibility for patient privacy. And so through some studies, we were trying to figure out what's the best thing to do to provide patient privacy. Generally, we don't like to use cubicle curtains in a room because those are infection prevention and infection control issues. They just harbor bacteria. And so we look for alternate solutions. Integral blinds, way too expensive. Surface film, yes, but you can't move it out of the way. So we ended up on these kind of almost like off the shelf blinds on the outside of the room. Um, but they actually turned out to be a really, really cool solution, and the staff love them because they can go to the blinds and they can look up above the blind, they can peel the blind to the side, they can look under the blind, and they can peek in at their patient and understand what's going on with that patient without disrupting the patient, without going into the room.
Nice.
But it also provides that level of privacy for the patient, so nobody's just walking by and looking into the room. So the staff loved it. It works great for the patient. Yes, they're not the most durable things. They may need to be replaced, every 3 to 5 years, but they are working really well. So there's some things like that you find that you're like, hey, that really worked better than we thought it was going to work, and it was kind of an accident. Then there's other things that you think are going to work really, really good, and just don't.
Sure. So, I mean, since you found that blinds work so well, have you used those in later projects?
We're considering them in a project now.
Oh, cool.
So we may be using those, or maybe using them alternate. It's still kind of in the air.
Gotcha. Cool. In your writing on hospital technology and healing spaces, you highlight the importance of engaging stakeholders early to ensure technology enhances rather than overwhelms the care environment. In practice, how do you strike that balance between advanced medical technology and a calming human experience? And can you share an example?
Yeah. So maybe before I get to technology and that example, the Facility Guidelines Institute, which writes the FGI guidelines and manages the FGI guidelines, and those are basically the healthcare standards and codes that we comply with in a healthcare setting. And the first thing that they call for to do at the beginning of a project is to create your functional program. And a functional program essentially is a outline, and there's 7 components that the FGI identifies. And it is an outline to identify how is this space and project going to function, and what is the need that's driving that. And so that functional program is key to establishing how you're going to integrate technology. There are hundreds, thousands of different technologies out there that you could implement in a healthcare setting. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. There's really cool gizmos and widgets out there that solve problems that you may not even know you have as a problem. That's probably not the kind of stuff you want to implement. You want to vet that technology. So by starting with a functional program, you're able to identify, this is what we want to use technology for. Technology isn't meant to I was just having this conversation the other day. It's not meant to reduce or eliminate this personal experience. It's used to enhance it. You want technology to be seamless and almost invisible to a certain extent in a healthcare setting, to where it's part of how you operate, and you don't have to think about it. It just does its job for you. So one cool example, and it's a real thing that many facilities are starting to adapt, but it's not widely used yet, is a technology that, there's a couple pieces of it, but there's virtual nursing, which is starting to become more broadly adopted. And I can touch on that here shortly, but part of that is a lot of cameras in a patient room. And what those cameras can do is, one, have a virtual nurse off site that can help monitor the patient and do charting and different kinds of things like that. But it also allows you to get readings on equipment that's in the room. So there's this thing called alarm fatigue. When you're in a hospital, there's constant beeping and whizzing and noises that keep you from getting rest and healing. And so some of those cameras can actually detect when those pieces of equipment are alarming, send a notification to a nurse who's off-site and manage that alarm. And so there's things like that. So that's an example of a technology that can be considered in your functional program. But as another piece of that functional program, and maybe it works in conjunction with your overall pro forma and your project budget. Technology is not cheap. And so if you want to do X, it's going to have an impact on Y. So virtual nursing is something I mentioned. That augments staffing. And so staffing models look different with virtual nursing versus not. And so it's not just a first cost from a construction perspective, but it's also a long-term operational cost. Maybe we don't have to hire this many nurses if we're going to do this virtual nursing thing. Yes, it may be, X hundreds of thousands, if not millions more to implement today, but we're not going to have to hire these many people. Oh, and we couldn't find them anyways because they don't exist because we're in a staffing shortage. And so there's some of those types of things that you have to look at through multiple lenses that are way outside of the architect's sandbox, so to speak, and not in the Delayed design at all, but they directly both impact and are impacted by what we do with the design of the facility.
Gotcha. I learned from talking to Luke when I interviewed him, the CEO of Guidon. What they might not. Guidon's mission centers on improving lives and empowering people. As a principal and healthcare practice leader, you are in a position to translate that mission from a statement into daily action. How do you embed those values into team culture, project workflows, and client relationships so the mission becomes visible in the build work?
It's all about people, and just being present and committing to the success of the people you're working with and the people you're working for. I lead a team at Guidon, and I am committed to my team to making sure that they are empowered and doing work that they love and having a good time. And I have the same commitment to my clients. When we're working on a project, I want to make sure that they are having a good time doing it. They are getting value from the work that we're providing, and we're helping them solve a problem and making their life easier. So that's really what it is just being present, committing to them and partnering with them, both internally with your teams, but then also externally with your clients, and just kind of walking day in and day out, step by step with the team throughout each project and multiple projects.
Gotcha. How is that quantified in the final product and the built work?
It definitely, it's really hard to, quantify per se from a straight line correlation, but you can tell, when people are energized by what they're doing, the work shows. When you're working with a team that you enjoy, the work shows. I've gone into many interviews for new projects, and they're interviewing 4 or 5 firms, and we all have cool projects that we've done. We all have, we've done oncology centers, we've done medical office buildings, we've done renovations of hospitals. Everybody's going to show cool projects, but what's different is who we are. You're interviewing us as people because you're going to be working with us on this project for the next 1, 2, 3, maybe longer years. You want to work with a team that you enjoy working with and are having fun with, and that's going to show in the project. Yeah, we've got the experience, and some may have more than others, but ultimately it's working together as a team and finding a group that you can work with and go to war with and go to battle with.
Gotcha. So I guess when problems arise, there's just people have the desire to buckle down and get it done instead of. Gotcha.
Yeah, you just get in the trenches with each other and get in there and do it. That's what it is. It's about and some people say, oh, that's servant leadership, and it's just leadership. And it's just pure leadership of just getting in there. That's what it is to be a leader, is to get in there with your team, do the work, do the hard things, do the messy things, and come out the other side with the team, and everybody is still gelled and working together, and you're better for the experience.
Gotcha. Where did you learn that leadership style?
It's evolved. A lot of times people say you learn more from leaders who don't do it right than leaders who do it right, or bad experiences versus good experiences.
Sure.
I've been in my fair share of situations where, man, I wish they would have done this, and why are we doing it this way? And it just kind of evolves through your lived experiences and projects you've worked on, and you kind of develop that way of thinking. And so far, at least, and as I approach projects with that mindset, it's worked really well, and we have a great team team buy-in and team commitment to the work we're doing. So
very cool. You sound like a good boss. Are you hiring? not for me. Anybody might be listening.
Hey, maybe.
You have been involved in you have been involved in full-scale mock-ups and what some call cardboard city exercises with systems like community health and IU health, physically testing layouts before construction even begins. For younger architects who may not have experienced this process, what makes these immersive mock-ups so powerful, and how have they reshaped decision-making or even revealed insights that drawings alone never could?
So this is some of the most fun things that we get to do in the design process are these mock-ups. And, when I say mock-up, some people think, oh, we're mocking up one room, we're going to tape it out on the floor. Cardboard City is just that. It's a city. I mean, with IU Health, we mocked up 60,000 square feet of space. With Community Health, we mocked up, I don't know, 120,000 square foot of space, all contiguous at the same time. And we're able to run real life scenarios as if the space was built. And so there is this level of learning that the users get to experience space before it exists physically, but also a level of learning that the design team gets to experience how the users are going to use the space. And so in those 3D mock-ups, you're able to interact with the space as a group. Some people say, well, why don't use virtual mock-ups? Well, you can only have one person in there, at least right now, at a time.
I was about to ask the same thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you only have one person in there at a time, and so they can see it. And a lot of times it's like, man, this is cool because it's VR. Well, would you change anything about what you saw? No. But it's more of the shock and awe factor of this is cool, and they forget that they're looking at something they need to comment on.
Yeah.
And so when you get there in a cardboard mock-up, you can have 20 people running a scenario. So in the example with Community, we did a scenario with the labor and delivery team where we walked a laboring mom. These were, we each assigned a person a role. So someone was the mom, the patient, and then everyone that was the users that were there was a staff member that would be in each role. Nurse, a doctor, the neonatologist and all those things. And so everyone had an assigned role. We ran these scenarios and we got to bring the mom into triage, take the mom from triage to her room, from her room to the C-section room. She had twins. The twins went to the NICU, and we walked this out in cardboard space and took all of those people where they were going, and everybody was going all kind of different ways. And we were measuring the speed it took to get places. We were measuring where sinks were located, where hand sanitizers were located, where equipment was placed, if it was too far, if it was too close, if it wasn't there at all, if we needed more of something. We were really studying and analyzing that. And after we would run these scenarios, we would evaluate them and say, how did it perform under the 7 to 9 flows of healthcare? And so we would evaluate and study it and determine, did it fail in any of these areas? Okay, maybe it wasn't great from an equipment flow, so we need to study that. How can we make it better? So then we would, in real time, while we're standing there, move a wall, move a piece of equipment, shift the door down while we're sitting there, and then we would run the scenario again and see if we broke anything with some of the other flows, or see if we improved that equipment flow that we were trying to address. And so we continued to iterate on that until we got the solution that we were looking for. Everything was flowing and working as it should. And then you take that to the next level of detail where you go wall by wall and say, hey, do we have enough power outlets, medical gases, that kind of thing. So it's really fun. It builds a ton of buy-in with your team. From the designer side, a lot of the team that we had, it was the first time they've gotten to do an event like that. And so it brought us together as a design team, really rallying around the work that we're doing. But beyond that, it brought the owner together too. They had probably 150 different staff members out there committed to the process in the trenches doing the work. And what was super cool about this is on top of their day jobs, right? They're still nurses and physicians and respiratory therapists and so on. But they come and they help, and they are leaving an impact and having ownership of this project. And so it really creates buy-in and a level of ownership in the work that you're doing, both for the design team and the client owner.
So we're not talking about tabletop cardboard models.
No.
We're talking about life size.
This is life size. You're in it. You're walking around. It feels kind of like a maze because you can't really see what's going on. And both of these we were very fortunate. In the case of IU Health, it was a warehouse that we mocked up the space, and Community, they're building the hospital in an existing building. And so we gutted the second floor of one of the existing buildings, and we just mocked it up there in place. So
right there on one site.
Yeah.
It's really good. You have any pictures or videos?
We do. There's a great video online. I can send you the link and
Yeah, do it.
of the community one where you can kind of see some of the processes and they interview some of the community team.
Yeah, I'll drop that in the description of the podcast. That's cool. Your efforts to foster emerging professionals were recognized with the AIA Indiana Tony Costello Young Architect Award. Mentorship clearly plays a central role in your career. Why do you see developing younger architects as essential to the health of the profession, and what practical steps can firm leaders take to build meaningful mentorships into everyday practice?
So for me, mentorship is just about it's not about having the right answers. It's about being present, being intentional, and really showing that you're invested in the growth of other people. Be that people internally on your team and in the office or outside of the office, in the community, through AIA, through other organizations, even sometimes competitors. It's really just being intentional and being present and showing up when people need you, and knowing they got your back. And then also imparting the knowledge that you've learned. As I mentioned, you learn more from bad experiences than good. And unfortunately, I've had quite a few bad experiences, and maybe I can share that knowledge so that other people don't have to maybe have some of those bad experiences, right? And they can learn and grow, and it amplifies your impact, right? I've learned, and probably to a fault, just to say yes, and I probably say yes too much. But as you say yes, it opens up doors and opens up opportunities, and saying yes to those mentorship conversations and having that dialogue with young designers, with upcoming designers. Not only are they gleaning information from you, but I learned so much from those conversations and from my team and working with other people. Um, it's honestly sometimes more for me than it is for them, to be honest, because I learned from those conversations and just hearing the experiences they've had and the new tools that they're using. And it's a two-way street, in medicine. And we kind of take this into healthcare design. There's the do one, or sorry, um, see one, do one, teach one. And so we kind of take that approach in mentorship too. It's like see one, do one, and then teach one, because you learn so much from teaching it. And I find that to be true for mentorship as well. If you're teaching something that you've done a few times, it's almost like you've done it every subsequent time with that person you're mentoring, because you kind of continue to learn as you go. It's a kind of part of that lifelong learning journey.
It seems to be a very popular philosophy with people in the industry.
Yeah,
The whole mentorship thing. It's really cool. It's very inspiring. Your community involvement extends beyond design projects, including serving on the Villages of Indiana Foundation Board. How has your work with that organization influenced your perspective on leadership, service, and the broader social responsibility of architects in their communities?
First off, the Villages, if you're not aware, organization that supports foster care, adoption, and prevent child abuse across the state of Indiana. Fantastic organization. And just being part of that organization, as well as a few others, they're doing so many good things in the community. And I feel like it's my obligation to give back to those organizations and what they're doing, and use my expertise. Like, I'm just a lowly architect, right? I don't know a ton of things, but there are things that maybe aren't common for nonprofit organizations that may need that expertise. And so just using my skills, talent, and time, and sharing that with the greater community, a rising tide lifts all boats. And so just being able to contribute, add value to what their mission is and then their goals, is just so meaningful, and extends the impact that I feel like I have in the professional workplace and in the design community and the architecture community to a different scale and to a different level. And it really personalizes, what we do in the design space.
What motivated you to join the board of a nonprofit that's beyond your daily responsibilities at work?
So I've always been really passionate about community involvement and giving back to the community. I mean, and speaking to the village, it takes a village to raise a child, which is where they got that name. And it does. It takes a village in the community. Like, we all need to give back. We're taking from our community. We're using resources in the community, and let's give back to those resources in the best way we can through our skills and our abilities and what we can contribute to our broader community here in Indianapolis and beyond.
Your connection to healthcare design is also deeply personal, as I understand, shaped in part by your family's experience navigating chronic illness. How has seeing the healthcare system from the patient and family side influence the way you think about space, dignity, stress, and support in the environments that you design?
Yeah, it is so huge. As a designer of healthcare environments, everyone has some sort of interaction with healthcare spaces, and healthcare is deeply personal to just not everyone, good, bad, and ugly. And so, for me and my family's experience through chronic illness and in and out of hospitals, in and out of clinics, fighting with insurance companies about coverages of procedures and prescriptions and all those kinds of things. Um, it really has challenged me to look at the work that I do and how I can make it better. Healthcare is a machine. It's huge, and we are just a little piece of that. And how can I leave it better than I found it? And it starts with empathy. So there's a really cool video I just saw recently that Cleveland Clinic has, that kind of shows this, and it highlights people in a hospital and shows you how vast the personal stories are just in one lobby in a hospital. I could see that link as well. But you see people that are there because they just know that they're pregnant and they're getting an ultrasound, or were just diagnosed with cancer, or are going through a divorce, or X, Y, and Z staff members who are so burnt out they're contemplating, suicide. There are so many different stories in that space that you have to approach every design move and everything you do with empathy. It's the best days of people's lives in that facility, and it's more likely the worst day of their lives. And you're interacting and creating space for them, in that moment of need, maybe despair. And how do you do that in a meaningful way? How do you create that space for them to grieve, create that space for them to be happy? It's different, but it's the same space. And so, just putting yourself in their shoes, putting yourself in that space, through the lenses of your own personal experiences, right? Mine in particular, and many others, and I go back to those from time to time as I'm working on projects, thinking, man, how would I want to be treated in this environment? How would I want my care to be delivered, my care to be received? And it's really easy to think about it when you're receiving care, and you go back and think about it a little bit differently. It's like, man, that staff member, why did they do this? I'm so mad because this happened when I was at the hospital. And then you go back and like, man, that person probably had a really bad day, or they may have had a patient down the hall throw something at them. I mean, there's so many instances of nurse violence in hospitals, and that's something we actually think about quite a bit.
Really? I never heard of that.
Oh my gosh, it is huge. It is huge. Like, patients attack nurses, they attack other caregivers in a hospital environment. We put code button or not code buttons, panic buttons in rooms so that patients can get out. There's methodology to always keep yourself between the patient and the door. So as a provider or a nurse, you do not get trapped in that room by the patient. There's so many instances of this, and kind of that adds the other layer into this of kind of the staff experience, right? The staff experience is totally different than the patient experience. And these are big facilities. I mean, you have thousands of people working in them and different roles, and how are they going to experience the space at different levels? So,
Gotcha. I just had a question pop back in my mind of a answer that you gave earlier, talking about the post-occupancy evaluations. Is that the correct term?
yeah.
Okay. Reminds me, again, a flashback to my conversation with Luke. He talks about after-action reviews. I'm sure you're familiar with that term.
Yeah.
Working with it. Is that kind of the same thing? I mean, I guess the question I'm asking is, what problem were you trying to solve when you implemented those, or when Guideline implemented those post-occupancy evaluations?
So yeah, after action, they're kind of two things. So after action is more of kind of a delivery feedback loop.
Mhm.
So from a project execution, as a designer, as an architect, what could we have done maybe differently in the design process? Did we need to do something a little quicker, a little slower? Did we coordinate this fully? Could this been coordinated better?
So that's about workflows and processes.
Yeah, it's more of workflows and processes from the design side. I would say post occupancy is more about the outcomes and the performance of the project itself, as the design itself. So was the design successful, and how did it perform? So kind of two different types of post occupancy evaluations. Yes.
So was there a particular problem or a series of problems that you were specifically trying to solve when you decided, or when Gaida decided, whoever, you didn't say who, actually implemented those evaluations?
It's a different per project. Are you referring to after action or the
The
post
post occupancy.
So the post occupancy is different per project, and I personally like to do them on every project that we do, because there's always something that you could study and learn from with the success of your work.
Sure.
And they're used commonly in healthcare. I don't know to what extent they can be used in other project typologies. I'm sure they can be, but it's really just talking to the people that are using the building when you're done.
Okay.
Did it work? Did it not? What would you do different? That's the baseline question. And then there's, nuances to go deeper into particular topics. Um, could be the organization of the waiting room. If it's a library, it could be the organization of kind of the stacks to the computer spaces and the ratio. I'm not a library guy, but different typologies would have different types of criteria that you would want to evaluate it against.
Gotcha. Okay. Just want to see if there was something specific that caused those, but you say it's used pretty commonly in the healthcare industry.
Yeah, and I'll go back to maybe on the functional program, because I think it's always through that lens, right? Is the space functioning like it was supposed to? And that's what you really define in the functional program. And so I was fortunate enough to be part of the Center for Health Design's Environmental Standards Council, who helped to develop this functional programming tool, which is on the Center for Health Design's website. And it really identifies the key areas that you need to look at in terms of the space's function. And then you look at that post-occupancy through the lens of, is it working or not? So maybe tying this together to Cardboard City, for example, one of the Cardboard City events I was in, we were looking at operating rooms. And we walked in the space, the users walked in the space, we were looking at the things on the walls, and hey, this looks awesome. And somebody asked the question, well, are we going to be doing these procedures in here? I'm the architect. I don't know if we're doing that procedure. What, you're asking me? Well, and then she says, well, yeah, if we're doing this procedure, we need this piece of equipment, we need that piece of equipment, and we need this piece of equipment, and we don't have that in here right now. I'm like, that's a great question. We probably should find out if we're going to do those procedures or not. And so it's those kinds of things that you really want to know up front. Are we going to do these procedures? This is the space that the space needs to function this way to perform these procedures. And once you identify that early on, you can ensure through the design process that it does function in that way, and you're maintaining that ability for the space to work.
Gotcha. Through the Architecture of Healing podcast, your podcast, you engage healthcare leaders, clinicians, and designers in deep conversations about strategy and environment. Hosting these discussions gives you a unique vantage point across the industry. How has stepping into the role of interviewer expanded your own thinking? And what reoccurring themes from your guests are most influencing the future direction of your work?
So I would say, I guess first and foremost, it's really taught me about listening. As you might know, as someone interviewing other people, listening is so huge, right? Just hearing people, not to really say, not to think about what you're going to say next, but listening to hear.
Right.
Like, what are you communicating? And that's so key. And that kind of waterfalls into so many other areas of work life and personal life too, of just listening and listening to hear, not to say. And so digesting that information, it's really stretched me as a person, as a leader, as a designer, to kind of have a seat with some really cool people, and just to have a conversation and share a coffee. I kind of treat it as like, hey, we're just having coffee. There might be some people that listen to this conversation and we'll see where it goes. And so just have some coffee with some really cool people, and hear about how they got to where they're at in their career, what kind of moved the needle in their journey, and what can we maybe glean from that as healthcare designers. And I personally have heard some really cool stories. It's challenged me to understand the why behind some of the projects that we're doing. So healthcare is very interesting because it's so tied to legislation and regulations. And we explore a little bit of that on the podcast in several episodes, and things like, is healthcare a right or a privilege? And that gets to, reimbursement and how we treat healthcare from a legislative perspective. Also, there's a common term, mission versus margin. And are we able to accomplish the mission of the hospital and care for patients? Or are we looking to turn a profit? Well, you have to have the profit margin in order to accomplish the mission. And so, as a designer, looking at things at that level of strategy really helps me understand how the projects that we're doing are going to impact both of those things. So maybe it's a new cancer center. Okay, well, this cancer center is going to cost $30 million. Okay, how is it going to provide a return on investment so that the hospital can accomplish the mission of treating cancer in their community? What does that look like? How is it going to impact the lives of the hundreds of thousands of people that go through there, and then also beyond through the system as a whole? And so in the podcast, I've had an opportunity to have some really cool conversations like that, well beyond the lane of architecture, so to speak, but it really challenges me as a designer to think bigger and to push myself into new ways of thinking. Some common themes, as you mentioned, in healthcare, I would say the biggest one that always comes up just about every conversation is flexibility. Technology, as we talked about, is evolving so quickly. It's changing, minute by minute. So we have to be flexible. We have to be nimble. There are certain pieces of technology that are getting bigger. There are certain pieces of technology that keep getting smaller. We have to be able to accommodate both. And space has a direct correlation to a lot of that technology and how it's integrated into those care environments. And so how are people being flexible? New ways of care delivery. So I mentioned virtual nursing. That's a new care delivery model, and understanding how the nurses and the staff are working in that care delivery model so that we can create a space that supports that care delivery. Our job isn't to create a space for them to work in. It's to create a space that solves their problem, to create a space that's going to be supportive of the care that they're delivering. And so it's really just taking those conversations, diving deep, taking them apart, and learning about how we're going to do that.
Awesome. Having been involved in a few healthcare products of my own, I've never been even close to involved in any kind of decision-making process. That's just not what we do. So this was very insightful. I really appreciate you taking the time to spill it out for us.
Yeah,
very cool.
absolutely.
Appreciate you sitting down and sharing your knowledge and insights as well. That's all I got. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah.